Well, hello everybody. Pastor Andy here. Welcome to Making It Simple on this beautiful Wednesday. Here we are already halfway through the week. I tell you, it just goes by faster and faster. But let's not take any time to deal with any of that. And let's jump right back in to where we left off yesterday. I've been talking about the days of Noah and why that is important now, thousands upon thousands of years later. It all goes back to a statement made by Jesus. And this is why this ties into an Old Testament lesson, if you will, because we're looking at the promise of God, the invitation of God, asking Noah to come into the ark. Why is that relevant now? Well, it goes back to what Jesus said. Jesus said that before his return could take place, that we would return to the days of Noah. It's important to understand what the days of Noah represents. What is that? Because again, it is a multitude of different things. It is not just only morals. In other words, it wasn't just about people being naughty. Okay, because again, that can be, again, that can be a lot of opinion about what is or isn't, depending on what your view is, and again, whether it's legalistic or what have you. That's not what we're talking about. While certainly morals play into that story, there's no question about that. There's no way to deny that, in fact. But what we talk about right now is how do we relate the two? Why is it comparative? What is going on here? Because we can easily look out today as we look at the situations around us today, whether it's world issues, local issues, whatever, family issues we look and see it never stops. I've heard that even recently. People say, it's so bad and it just never stops. We go back to what we were reading yesterday. It says that God saw, this is chapter 6 and verse 5 of Genesis, and God saw the wickedness of man was great upon the earth. Okay, 2023, no different. And that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It never stopped. This is where pride comes in. This is where pride gets dangerous, if you will, because it's like cancer. And again, I'm not denigrating anybody suffering with that. I understand the pains of that greatly. I lost my only sister to it. It's a real thing. But it's like cancer that goes untreated or detected or dealt with, doesn't stop growing. It just keeps getting worse. And the more it grows, the more fatal it becomes. It's the same way with pride. It's the same way with evil and wickedness unchecked at the door. That's why God says there will come a point when it's enough. See, we look at that, and then we look at the world today. I can say without a doubt, having spent all those years on the road, and now having been, of course, out in the public for all these years, working and doing what I do, working with people, I have never, in all my almost 54 years, I have never seen wickedness like it exists today. I have never seen the conjuring of evil in minds like it is today. Now, certainly there have been bad people before. We read history books about them. We know them by name. We can spout them off, and I'm not going to give any of that any credence or time, but we know that this has happened before. But today, it seems to go even further. Today, it seems limitless. And the horror stories that we hear, it's just unbelievable. In fact, it seems that there is an absence of conscience, if you will. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's just utterly amazing, the stories, and in fact, sometimes horror stories that we hear. It beckons me back to my time on the road and saw things that people shouldn't see, and we don't want to believe that there could possibly be real. But we see corruption. We see the corruption of moral decisions. We hear all these stories that are just awful. And it appears, because we see so much of what happens here in our nation, it appears our moral compass is broken. And pretty much every care, every concern, well, it's just been thrown out the window. It's been cast into the wind. I mean, it really does appear that the attitude, the societal promotion, if you will, the prompting is basically saying, just go do whatever you want to and have no concern about the consequence. But that's not true. You have to have concern about the consequence because there's always one attached. Always. There's always a price tag. But society today is, and it's prompted by the leading of the enemy himself. Society today is saying, oh, no. You can live however you want to. You can do whatever you want to. Well, that's true. But are you ready to pay the price that that's going to cost? That's a question that has to be answered. That was the days of Noah. Noah told everyone, hey, I know this might sound strange, but God said it's going to rain. And it's not just going to rain a little bit. It's not just going to fertilize the crops or make the grass grow so you got to cut your lawn again next week. No, God said it's going to flood the earth and everything is going to be destroyed. They didn't pay him any attention. They ignored him. Oh, hey, crazy old man. Remember, it said he was 600 years old. Oh, what does he know? He don't know anything. Sin, I mean, this is today now. Sin, oh, come on. What is that? Who are you to judge me? You can't judge me. You can't tell me how to live. You can't tell me what to do. The Bible, we don't need that. That's old. We don't need that anymore. Recent celebrity said, my faith is better than that old stuff. We don't need that anymore. We need the new thing. Vulgarity? Well, that's your opinion. We call it entertainment. Here's what we have to understand, friends. When we begin traveling down this road, and it's already started, so it's not about a speculation. This has already started. When we begin traveling down that road, we find it to be a slippery slope. And if you've ever gone down a slippery hill, it is very difficult to get back up it because the footing is almost impossible to gather. You almost can't do it at all. And then what happens when it comes to the moral decline of things? And we're not talking about anybody being perfect. We're not talking about ever having a stub your toe moment or hit your thumb with a hammer. We're not talking about being not human. But when we begin to sear the conscience, which it talks about in the New Testament in the end times, that the conscience would be seared. That's the equivalent of scar tissue, if you will, meaning it doesn't have any feeling. It's dead. Maybe you've had a bad wound on your body, and that particular area has no feeling. You can prick it with a pen, you can hit it with your, and you don't feel anything. When the conscience is seared, that means you don't care anymore. And then we begin to see things like they are today. Abortion. That's just another thing to do. Who cares? It's not alive. It's just a clump of cells. It's this, it's that. All the stuff that we've been told, that it doesn't matter. It just becomes another thing to do. It's not even a big deal anymore because, I mean, hey, it's legal. But what did God say? See, we find all these reasons to justify things, but no one ever bothers to look at what it's going to cost. No one ever bothers to look at what did God say, but rather what we see in the world today is the attempt to change that, the attempt to redefine things. See, the numbing of the heart and the numbing of the mind is dangerous. It's dangerous because then too far is never far enough, and it just keeps getting worse. Pandora's box opens. Well, if they can do it, I can do something else. If they get to have 2 wives, I want 4. If they get to marry a guy, I want to marry a guy and a girl. It never stops. We have a 15-week ban or whatever on abortion. But this state over here says, well, that's not enough. We need to go to how many ever. Some other states say, we don't need to have any restrictions at all. In fact, they can already be born and we can still do it. It never stops. Thinking evil continually. God said this was the problem in the days of Noah. Jesus said those times would return. It tells us in verse 6 of our study here in Genesis that it repented the Lord. It broke his heart that he had even made man on the earth. It grieved him at his heart. Jesus said these times would return. In other words, there will be another cleansing. It's coming. That's not even a question. I believe with all my heart, and again, as I've said in prior studies, videos, written things, I'm not a gloom and doom person at all. I'm not a prophet of doom. I'm not any of that stuff. But friends, they're here. The days of Noah are here. And they don't get better when it comes to a broken moral compass, when it comes to a corrupt and ungodly system, because those things are fueled by flesh. Those things are fueled by emotions. In other words, if it feels good, do it. If it looks good, eat it. Whatever we can come up with all those cliches, all those different things. But what's being left out of that? The consequence. Nobody wants to hear about that because everybody is trying to be conditioned to believe that there's not going to be one. But that's not the laws of nature. That's just not how it works. This is not from the script of some Hollywood writer. This is not some made-up phony story from somebody that wants to be a Hollywood writer. This is not anything. This is real. This is real. And the sooner we realize that, the more we'll see lives around us changing. You see, it tells us that in the days of Noah, God's heart was grieved. We can absolutely be assured for certain, 1,000%, that God's heart is grieved right now in a mighty, mighty, mighty way, because wickedness, morals, there's none, violence at levels that is almost unspeakable. There's some of the things that I know that have happened. I don't even want to talk about it here in this lesson because it's so awful. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I don't want us to use our time to see if we can find stories to compare to see who's seen the worst or heard the worst. The fact of the matter is, things are awful. They were before. Nero, if you've done any studying of history, you go study the character of Nero. This man was so vile, he was so wicked and depraved, that he would literally sit on his balcony at night and the lights in his garden, now mind you, there was no electricity, the things that lit his garden, the flames that lit his garden at night for him to sit over and just view and just ponder and enjoy, were people on fire. Wickedness has always been around since the fall, but gone unchecked, with no restraints, it only gets worse. The things we hear about today, they seem to be right off the screen of some horror movie. How did God feel about this in the days of Noah? It says in verse 7, I will destroy man. Here, we're not talking about the male sex or this male side of it. We're talking about mankind, humanity, period. I will destroy man whom I have created, and I will destroy him from the face of the earth, both man and beast and all creeping things and the fowls of the air, for it repents me that I have made them. judgment will come to wickedness. There are many today that think not. There are many today that continue to sell their snake oil. There are many today that continue to live in this fantasy bubble. There was an old song, an old spiritual, and the tagline in that kept coming back around us. You can bet you God Almighty will cut you down. Friends, that's not a statement of judgment. That's not a statement of if anything, but fact, because Scripture makes it clear. I remember years ago, I was working in the court, and this guy had killed his dad, and it was horrifying. It was brutal what had happened. And I remember he struck a plea deal, and so in essence he kind of got by with it. Yeah, he was still going to jail for a while, but he got this sweetheart deal, and he avoided going to the electric chair and whatever the case. And he got this big grin on his face as he's walking out of the courtroom. He goes by me because he knew me because I was his guard at that time. And he looked at me and said, "Dan, I got by with it." Oh, he was guilty. Oh, he was guilty all day long. At the crime scene, I mean, he was covered in blood. I mean, clearly he had done it. But I remember looking at him and saying, "Well, maybe. I don't know about that." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you still got one more judge to face." His smile kind of diminished a little bit on that. See, friends, it tells us in Romans chapter 6 and verse 23, many of us have heard this voice, for the wages of sin is death. Wages are what you earn. When I'm at work and I'm putting in my time, you're at work, you're putting in your time, whatever case, what you earn on Monday, Friday, whenever you get paid, that's your wages. God says, if you continue to work in sin where you're earning wages, what you will earn is death. Death. Now, all of us have a natural appointment with the cessation of this life, but then the next life starts. What is that death? We'll talk about that as this lesson goes on. Here's the thing. The wages of sin are death, is death. Many have forgotten that because they've been told, I can do whatever I want. I can live however I want. I can do anything I want to. Okay, you can. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. He talks about you can absolutely, all things are lawful, all things are permissible. But, there's that but, pivotal point of the conversation as it turns, not all things are beneficial. Not all things are good for you. You can do it if you want to, but are you looking at the consequences? It's like the warning label on the side of something. You can drink that poison that's in that bottle with the skull and the crossbones and all. You can drink it. It's liquid. But the warning says if you do, it will kill you. Oh, it won't hurt me. See, that's what people have been conditioned to believe today. I can do whatever I want to do. I don't have to believe that stuff. That was a problem in the days of Noah. They didn't want to hear it. They were too busy doing what they wanted to do. They didn't believe it. Even though Noah told them day after day after day for over 100 years. Can you imagine? Over 100 years, he told them, it's going to rain. Nobody believed him. Nobody believed him. He said, it's coming. It's going to rain. You better get ready. There were no responses. We can be assured there was only mockery. There were no serious listeners. There was just the, yeah, right. You go ahead and you keep on building your little boat. We're going to live it up. We're going to do whatever we want. We're going to have. It sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Very familiar. It's the time we're living in, friends. We'll continue with this tomorrow, Lord willing. I have a travel day on Friday. I'm not sure that I'll be able to be with you, but for sure tomorrow, I don't have any issues that I can imagine that we should be here together tomorrow. This lesson is important, and I realize that it's heavy in nature and almost a warning type thing. But friends, this is important because when we look at the days of Noah and we look at the promise or the invitation, I should say, I'm getting my words mixed up, the invitation from God to come in here when he says to Noah, come you and all your family into the ark. That's what he's saying to us today because it's getting ready to rain. And it's not going to be water this time. God is giving us the invitation to come and hear the Lord. Are you listening? Are you telling those that you care about? That's what Noah did. He told them for a long time. They didn't listen, but he told them anyhow. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.